It's time to talk about the dreaded too many men call. For the 11th time this season, the Arizona Coyotes take a too many men penalty. It's something that we've seen again and again and again. It is so beyond frustrating. So frustrating that Contra Attorney has had to comment on it again and again. And before we get into the conversation, on March 5th, the Coyotes lost 5-2 to the Chicago Blackhawks. They, of course, took a too many men penalty then. And Craig asked Bear about it. This is from March 5th.
Yeah, I asked him how to explain it.
Yes. And here's Bear's response to that.
Too many men, it just keeps coming.
Stupidity. That's what it is. I think it's something we did address, and obviously we'll have to have accountability. I think it's on us, the coach, to make sure that doesn't happen again. I think there's the one last game. It's on us, the coach. There were miscue on the bench, but the one too many of the one. It's not paying attention to what's going on the ice.
So Andre Tourigny made it pretty clear after that game against Chicago that there was going to be accountability coming from the coaches. So what did we see tonight?
It's funny because we sat here and watched, oh my goodness, they did it again. They did it again. And what do we always do? Because that's what we like to do. Whose fault was that?
Yeah.
So what do we
like
do?
to assign blame.
We went to the film.
Yep.
And luckily enough, we can't show you highlights here because we don't have the copyrights to do so. But we can give you a PD's Puck Talk, the Too Many Men on the Ice edition. And now it's time. So let's start, Danielle, to see what the hell happened and why this team continues to take too many men on the ice penalties. And you can see on the first slide, Leah so nicely was able to circle all 6 Coyotes. This isn't one where someone's almost at the bench and they're almost changing. Oh, the ref called it and he shouldn't have. This is a gray area. No, they're all 6 on the ice. So let's take a look at what happened. First slide, we have to go to the time and what's happening in the game. And what's happening in the game is the Coyotes are on a power play. When the Coyotes have a power play, they have 4 forwards and 1 defenseman. That's how they have their power plays. That's just it. That's it.
A lot of teams do that, right?
A lot of teams do that. Both of their units, the first and second power play unit, have 4 forwards, 1 defenseman. That means one of those forwards is assigned as a defenseman when he comes to the bench. The player on this group of 5 assigned to be the defenseman is Logan Cooley. Logan Cooley is a defenseman. So as you can see in the slide, Logan Cooley and J.J. Moser at the very, very end of the power play. 3, 2, 1, power play. This is it. Power play's over. They're going to the bench for a change. 2 defensemen. Logan Cooley, not usually a defenseman. They go to the bench. That's slide 1. Next slide. So 2 defensemen thinking they're jumping over the boards. Dermott, Brown, 2 defensemen. They're jumping over the boards. That makes sense for 2 defensemen coming. So go to the next slide. The problem is Jack McBain thinks that Logan Cooley is a center.
Okay.
Because Logan Cooley is a center.
So Jack McBain didn't think he was a defenseman.
He did not think Logan Cooley is a defenseman at this time. He's looking at the ice going...
He didn't think he was a defenseman himself either, did he?
I don't think he did.
Just checking.
He doesn't play like one usually. So he's looking over the boards going, Logan Cooley's a center. I'm not really paying attention to what's going on in the game. So how about he's a center. I should go on the ice. Not being aware that Nick Bukestad is also on the ice, who is actually the center of this grouping. So when Jack McBain sees Logan Cooley coming to the bench, he's thinking he's a centerman. I'm going to jump on the bench as well. And you end up with 6 players on the ice. Now, whose fault is that? You can clearly see whose fault that was. Because within seconds, the coach is having a word with number 22 on the ice and pointing, you get to go serve the penalty since you're the one that jumped out on the ice. So we could see Jack McBain going from the penalty box or from the ice to the penalty box. And the last time his feet touched the ice was once that penalty was over and he skated around for a few seconds and went back to the bench. And then he did not touch the ice.
A total of 3 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time for Jack McBain, who entered this game, what? On a 6-game point streak, was it?
Yeah, he's a 6-game point streak against the Wild.
Yeah. Where did he come? Where did the Coyotes get him?
The Minnesota Wild.
That's right. So you'd think this would be a game where he might want to show something. Well, he really didn't get much of an opportunity in 33 of ice time because, as you mentioned, he wasn't paying attention. And as we've said many times, it's on the players to know whether they're going out or not, who they're replacing. It's on the players, 100%. They know their assignments. accountability when it happens over and over again, that's the coach. And what happened tonight? Andre Tourigny said after the last time this happened, there's gonna be accountability from us, the coaches, because it's happened too often. Next game, bang, Jack McBain sits for the rest of the game.
I've got to say, kudos to Andre Tourigny here.
Yep.
That is hard to do, especially to a player that plays the amount of minutes that Jack McBain plays for this team and the role he plays. You talked about him is coming back to Minnesota, a team that had drafted him. All of those things, his point streak, he's an effective player on the ice. They need Jack McBain. They do. He's an effective player for this team. To be able to look as a coach and go, okay, that is more important right now than what's happening on the ice there. This lesson to the group, this lesson to the guys on the bench is much more important than the game itself. And that's when a coach can do that, I'm impressed, because that takes guts. It's hard to do.
It sure is.
And he stuck to his guns. And I guess what? I would think, and here's two thoughts. One, I bet you that guys will be more aware on the bench. Especially for this team, seems to do it a lot at the end of penalty kills and at the end of power plays. They seem to have difficulties in this. They seem to have difficulties at the end of special team situations or when they play 11-7. So I bet you guys on the bench are more aware. The concern to me now is if the next time it happens, it's Clayton Keller.
Mm-hmm.
And Clayton Keller has been the responsible party before. He has. We've seen it. But especially in the 11-7 where he's double shifting. Next time it's Clayton Keller, you have to do the same thing.
You do, because you can't have a double standard.
And that's when it gets really hard.
Yep.
And Bobby Francis, and I know that's going way back in the Coyotes lore. Bobby Francis, he coached the players like Kachuk and Ronak and that group of players. He would bench Keith Kachuk. And he was, and I'll say this, and this includes Dave Tippett. I'll put Bobby Francis as the best bench coach this team's ever had. Because the accountability he assessed to players immediately when it happened. There was no waiting a next game or between intermission. It's now. I don't care who it is or what it is. You play the right way or you don't play. And that's incredibly hard to do with personalities like that. So for Bear, good on him. Good on him. Because that's really hard to do. But now that you've set the standard, you have to keep the standard. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how Jack McBain comes out and what he says, if anything, about this.
I don't want to go so far as to call this growth for Andre Tourigny, because I'm not familiar with what he was like when he was in the Q or the O. But this is something you need to do as an NHL coach. You need to have this sort of accountability. So I agree with you 100%.
You can't say it in the press conference and then not show it behind the bench. And he said it. He said it a week. It was 1 week ago today. He said it. Put his money where his mouth is. He stood by his gun. So I'm really impressed with that. And does that make a difference in the outcome of this game? Jack McBain missing ice time? Probably not, because the you just got the guys that got more ice time were Keller and Cooley. Like, those two got a lot more ice time. They double shifted a lot. So I don't think it's like, oh, they lost the game because Jack McBain wasn't on the ice. I don't believe that. But
it's a lesson. And let's pay attention now for the final 16 games of the season and see if they take another one of these penalties.
Yep.
That'll be the real measure.
Yeah, but 11 too many men on the ice calls already. A lot of fans, criticizing the coaching. So, he definitely put his money where his mouth is. And something we were talking about when it happened was how important communication on the bench is. Because I had tweeted, like, how does this keep happening? And Jason Demers actually replied. He said, better communication by coaching staff and the players on the bench. More talk means less guessing.
Yeah, I know we talked about that too. And when the first line of communication starts with the coaches to the players, because who knows who's up next? Well, the coach does, and who's ever coach running that part of the bench. So Mario Duhamel runs the defense. So the defensemen know who's going up next. Mario has to tell him.
Yeah,
Brownie, you're up next. You guys are up next. And that's how they know who's up next. So the next part that needs to happen in this particular example, some of it relies on, Bain's got to know.
Yeah.
These guys are coming up. And it's, especially in a situation like this, the communication between the bench is, I'm telling you, they're yelling out, Cooley's a D, Cooley's D. I'm telling you they are. And as Cooley's coming to the bench, he really needs to be saying D. He really does. He needs to be yelling D, D, D. Because in that situation, he has to be aware that he's going in for a D2. So I think the communication is the key to all of this. Yeah. From the coach to the players on the bench. And then the players on the bench, when you sit on an NHL bench, the amount of talk that's going on the bench that has nothing to do with the ice is all about the line change. I got him, and the two guys will sit there on the winger. I got this guy, this guy. On penalty kills and power plays specifically, because you're not assigned to there's two penalty killers and they're both forwards. I've got him. When Richardson's come, I got him. And so they know, like, it's between those two players. You two are up next, but the two players decide, especially in a penalty kill situation or a power play situation, who's going out. Has to be communication, and clearly there isn't enough, because Jack McBain was lost. And as soon as he jumps on the ice, the defenseman. Why am I having just a total brain fog? 33. Why can't I think left hand?
Dermott. Travis Dermott. Yeah.
Sorry, I want to say Demers because we just said Demers. So Dermott, you could see him pointing right away, like to McBain to get off the ice. Like, he knew there was a mistake right away, and he knew that McBain jumped on and he shouldn't have. But instead, Dermott points to McBain. McBain doesn't see him, so Dermott jumps off the ice. So it looks like it's Dermott's fault, but in fact, it was clearly just McBain's.